Hello and welcome to We Never Met, the podcast where I talk to interesting strangers every single week. And today we have Jon.
Hey.
Yeah. How you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
We literally just met just now.
That's right.
First time ever. And among other things that I don't know necessarily about you yet, I know you from MKE Drones,
yep,
which is your Instagram account, your website, where you do like aerial photography and video work.
Yes.
So I guess to start off, when did that whole thing develop?
Yeah. So back in, I believe it was 2016, I was kind of going through some stuff last night, just kind of looking at some of my old files. Back in around 2015, 2016, the paving company that I actually still work for, Asphalt Paving, so construction.
Okay.
I was the youngest guy there, you know, and they're like, hey, we should start using drones for marketing. And I'm like, okay. And they're like,
sure,
here, you do this. And I'm like, okay, all right, sure, whatever.
Yeah.
So, being the quote unquote techie kid there, whatever. So they threw that at me and we went out and got one. And, the first one we got wasn't great, and it was a good learning experience right away to learn how to start flying drones.
What was the first one you got?
It was a Unique brand, which is like with a Y, Unique, Y-U-N-E-E-C. Unique.
Okay, I've never even heard of them.
They're definitely not as popular as they were like even like 4 or 5 years ago. DJI is huge, and I'll get into that too. So that at least got my feet, got my feet wet in it and started going around flying some then.
Yeah.
And then as we got more serious about it, it was like, hey, we should think about getting a different, drone that's a little bit more capable.
Right.
So then we moved into a DJI drone that started things off. And then at some point in that whole time frame of starting to do that with work, I thought, man, there's a huge business opportunity here. And looking around online, I'm like, there's not a whole lot of this stuff in the area yet.
Right.
So I'm like, shoot, I should jump into this. So bought my own gear. Okay. And then it jumped into the whole the laws and all this stuff around it all with the commercial side of it. And that became an issue too, because back in 2016 and 15 especially, there wasn't really any good laws for drones for commercial.
Right.
So the only thing they had was something where basically you had to have a manned pilot's license in order to fly.
What?
A drone, yeah. Which is insane because
that's crazy.
For two reasons. Number one, that's a massive cost. People spend, thousands of dollars getting a pilot's license, tons of hours of flight time, in a plane with an instructor, and then on the ground, the ground school stuff too before that. So it's a massive process. And I part of me gets it. They didn't really know what they were doing yet with it all. That
sure.
was
they just want to put something on it. So not everyone's doing it.
And then, but the other problem with it is that a manned pilot may or may not be able to fly a drone, just like I can't fly a manned plane. They don't apply at all. They're completely different.
Yeah.
And so that's why it was so ridiculous. And so people were like, well, okay. And there were people who had crossover, had a pilot's license, maybe came out of the remote aircraft world, flying RC planes or helicopters and that stuff. And that was a good crossover for some of those people to be able to fly and easily jump into this new thing, making money flying, some pretty large drones for movies and, early on stuff like that.
Yeah.
So then in 2016 was when the laws finally became reality to what they are today for commercial drones.
Okay. And
so I was actually one of the first people in the state to get certified for flying drones in under that new law system called Part 107. Yeah. I was literally the day they released it. I'd studied for weeks before. I walk into the testing center at 9 a.m. I think they opened at 8. Okay. And I know both the guys that were in front of me that went at 8 o'clock. I actually know both of them. And so I'm at 9 o'clock. I'm in there. Boom, knock this test out, pass. I'm like, all right, good to go.
Yeah.
So that started it kind of then. It was like, all right, well, got the gear, got the legal side of it handled, get the insurance. And okay, well, how do we make this happen now? What do I got to do? And that's the hardest part then is you have once all the pieces of the puzzle are in place, as far as that goes, it's, well, now I got to find work. I got to market myself and all that.
Yeah. And
so then that jumped into
how did that happen? All that.
I was fortunate that, on the construction side of things, my job was sales. Sure. So I was easily able to take some of that experience and go, okay, well, what's my target market? Where do I see this being used the best or the most, easily to just plug into different areas with drones. Right. So construction or marketing companies, stuff like that. And so I, at first I made a couple calls and I was like, well, I don't really have anywhere to send these people. I don't have anything to show them. So I was like, all right, well now I need to figure out, okay, I got to get some stuff put together, get some videos, create some photos, all that stuff. and then create a website. And then that way now I have a place to direct people.
Right.
And go, hey, go check out my stuff here.
Yeah.
If you like it, you want to meet? You want to, and so then I started doing cold calling, basically like on the phone, just straight up calling people. Hey, what do you think about, this? And it worked a little bit. I mean, it's cold calling. Like it's, the
success rate is probably low.
Yeah. I mean, some people don't call you back. Some people just don't care, but then you do hit some and then it takes off from there.
Right. So who were some of the first people that you had? Believe
it or not, one of the first things I did was I was in way over my head was a golf course.
Oh, really?
Yeah, up in Menominee Falls. And, like it wasn't even over my head as far as like just like flying and getting the video and all that.
Right.
It was like the amount of time that it takes to do a golf course. I've done more of them since. And now I obviously know like what I'm getting myself into, but it's like multiple trips to try and get all the whole shot just right, how you want the lighting just right, all that. And then when you have like 18 of anything, the post processing is an eternity. Yeah. Like when you're creating out like a real estate video for a home or a commercial property, it's one video. Like that's it. The golf course thing is like an eternity of editing.
What are they using those videos for? Just marketing?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what they'll do is the ones I've done, they put them on the website. So then that way there's basically, if I want to check out the course, I can do a fly through cool. Like of each hole. Basically you can click on it and do a video fly through of each hole and see what it's like and kind of get a feel for it.
Wow.
So, and then usually I create one that's just an overview of the course too.
Sure.
So it just shows like the clubhouse and, like their driving area, whatever. And just kind of shows what the course overall looks like.
Yeah. Cause on your website too, it says you've done stuff for like the BBC. That's pretty major.
This was back in, I think this was 2017, I would say. So a couple of years ago, they reached out. They were here shooting at Taliesin, which is Frank Lloyd Wright's house out in Spring Green.
Wow.
Which is like west of Madison, south of Madison. And they were shooting a special out there, like basically a 1 hour documentary about that house. And like, hey, we want to get a bunch of drone footage of it. So,
so
I went out and shot for, I think half a day out there with them. And, it was one of my first production things I did, and they were really chill. They're just like, yeah, just go shoot. Like it was a small crew for them. It was only a couple guys there.
Oh, wow.
Basically a cameraman, a sound guy, the director, and the guy that was doing the voiceover, who was kind of like an actor, So he's walking around talking, doing voiceover stuff around the facility. And they're just like, yeah, just go shoot. And, we'll try not to step on each other. Like we're getting in your shots and you're getting in ours. And worked out great. It was pretty cool.
Well, that's pretty incredible for them to reach out to you.
Yeah. Yeah. The website for that stuff, my website's been big. That's how a lot of these productions, like last year I did one with JBL, the audio company.
Oh, cool.
That was actually an ad that had Giannis in it. And I didn't shoot him at all. He was a separate day. We were shooting all the stuff I was doing the day before.
Yeah.
But it was still cool to work with them on that. And they almost flew me out to Michigan to do another one, actually. Because they're like, yeah, dude, we've already, we've had some people do some of the other, because they were doing like different NBA stars in different cities doing videos with them. And I guess they had a couple bad experiences. Like, he's like, if I can afford to, I'm going to try and fly you out for this. Because he's like, this, some of these have been like less than stellar. And I'm like, hey, if you can swing it and I can swing it. And he ended up not getting back to me, which was fine, because flying with drones is fine, but it's a pain in the butt. So
that's what I was gonna ask. Like, what when you first started learning, what was like the hardest part to like flying a drone? Because I've only flown one. I'm a video producer, and I've flown one a couple times.
Yeah.
And but it takes like a lot of skill to get like the cinematic kind of shots that you want.
Yeah, so I always tell people, like, if you just want to go, because people are like, oh, how hard is it to fly a drone? I'm like, it's easy. Like, to just put a drone in the air, and just go forward, backwards, all that. It's simple. Like, it's fairly intuitive as far as the initial, like, how to use it goes. But where it gets hard is then, like you said, like getting cinematic shots, knowing what you need to get, and then executing that, like, with precision, like, where there's not jerky movements in the video clip, or where you're nailing that shot, and especially if you're doing single op, where like you're watching the screen to make sure that shot is dead on what you want, but you're also like avoiding obstacles like trees and power lines and stuff like that. And so on bigger stuff, I have done 2 operator. One of my larger drones will allow that, where you can have one person flying and one person operating the camera. So that way, if I'm flying, I'm just watching the drone and the guy on camera is worrying about that. But then you got to coordinate too, because on the camera, I got to tell him what I need him to do, like how fast he needs to be going, what direction, like all that. So you got to pre-plan each shot out and make sure you're both on the same page on it all.
Yeah.
So for me, I do mostly single ops just because I know what I want.
Yeah.
But there's definitely situations where you can't, like, you have to have 2 people there to get the shot done.
Right. And has there been like any terrible experiences with you where you have flew into power lines or like?
So I mean, anybody who's flown drones for any amount of time will tell you like they've crashed. Like it happens. Like it's not a matter of if, oh no, I'll never crash. It's when. Like everybody does it. And it's just how bad is it too, you know? Early on I had, just like when I was practicing, I had some the thing about drones is orientation always. So like if the drone's facing you, everything's reversed, so like that in your head, but if you're not quick enough, especially early on, like your first, half a dozen or a dozen times you go out, like it's not, you don't feel it right away. Yeah. You don't have a feel for it right away. And so I hit some trees with one, and that just totally bit it. Like the thing about a drone is if you crash from 15 feet up, they're pretty much screwed. Like
really?
Yeah. Any drone pretty much. If it's 15 feet up and it crashes, it's gonna break into pieces. It's just how many pieces. Like the difference between 400 feet and 15 is just how many pieces you end up with when you hit the ground. And it's been better especially in the last few years. Like I haven't had a lot, but there was even one last year with my larger drone where I was getting this shot, and I thought I was like maybe 5 feet off a telecom line, like a overhead phone line or whatever, and I was a little closer than I thought, and so I didn't like hit it, but my prop like touched it enough to break the prop off. And so it went into like this controlled descent where it just was or uncontrolled descent where it's just like kind of goes down, and it still did like $800 in damage, but so it sucks, but it happens.
They're expensive things to break for sure.
And sometimes they go without you anything that's your fault. I have one that had a power failure in the air. One of my Phantom 4s actually had a power failure, and you can't control that. The battery ejected is what I think happened. And then I have a friend who straight up had a motor failure on a quad where you got 4 motors. If one of them goes, it's done. Like there's not any redundancy with the motors. So if one of them dies, it drops like a rock.
Jeez.
So he had a motor. Like a bearing on a motor went, and it just out of the sky like that. So, some of these things are outside your control. You can try to prevent them. You can try to like check temps on motors and like make sure batteries are in and everything's good. But stuff happens at the end of the day.
Yeah. So what do you do regular photography as well? Yeah. So did you do that before you started?
Yeah, so drones? I did some in high school for sure, back in the film days actually, which was so hard. It's back in the day, like now it's so easy to take photos because like take it and you know what you got. Like you can go edit it and post and all that and play with it, but like you at least know, okay, this is kind of what I was wanting. I can tweak it later. Back when it was film, it was like you shoot and then like you wait. I didn't have a dark room. Like some people used to have dark rooms and stuff where they go edit their own stuff or I'm sorry, go develop their own stuff. But like you're taking it to like Walgreens and going, here you go. And then like a week later, you're like, ooh, these all suck. So I did some stuff back then. And then I actually have a music degree. So music was more my thing through college and all that. And then not until I got into more doing marketing stuff at work and all that I jumped back into photography and all that.
Yeah. What music? Like what do you play?
Yeah, so I'm mostly classically trained. Trumpet was my principal in
I used to play trumpet in high school.
So I played all the way up until probably 2 or 3 years ago when everything just got too busy with drones and all that, and I stopped playing, but I was still playing up until a couple of years ago.
So what was your ambitions for that? Like what?
Music education. Okay. Music teacher. Okay. And then so back when I got out of school back in 2008, 2009, back when the economy tanked, and so out of college, and so instead of trying to go into a grind for a music career, I was already working in construction, and I'm like, I'm just going to stay in this because it pays the bills, and schools are cutting programs left and right, trying to save money and all this. So I'm like, I don't want to fight.
And unfortunately, music is a lot of times the one they cut.
101, they're like, you're out. Yeah, we're going to cut back on our music program. We had 3 teachers. We're going to go back to 1, and they're going to have to figure it out. So I was like, I don't want to fight for a job and all that. So I just went back into construction, which I had been doing the summers in college. And stuck with that.
What about the trumpet initially attracted you to it? Like why did you?
So actually, this one's easy. My dad played trumpet, so I started when I was in 5th grade.
Oh wow, yeah.
So that's like 20 years almost, whatever, playing it. And my dad played trumpet when he was a kid, and so there was always like that. Oh, you should do that, And so I think I even got one from a relative or something like that, and picked that up, and yeah.
And then just went going
with it, yeah. And I was one of those kids that most musicians will talk about this similar experience. People that end up doing it in college and beyond and all that usually are the kids that like their parents didn't have to like crack a whip on them to practice.
Sure,
you just wanted to play. Like you just like playing. So you go in your, bass, whatever, and practice every night and play and just do it for fun.
Yeah. Is that what you did?
Yeah. I was always practicing and playing and just, taking lessons and then not wanting to do stuff the teacher tells you to do, but you still got to kind of do it.
Right.
And, so yeah, that was my.
Wow. What do you think about that? Like, what do you think was like attractive to you about playing music? Like what did you get out of it?
I feel like music's kind of a universal language. I mean, and I think that more than anything else, I think music is able to draw emotion out of people. Like just music has so much emotion tied to it in general. Like people, any song people listen to evokes feelings some way or another. And so I always have felt that like draw towards like music and just how it affects, me as a person or people in general.
Right.
And that kind of makes it almost a universal language that like you can listen to the same piece, whether you're from Russia or from here, and it's probably going to evoke a similar set of feelings. Like, this is trying to portray something of like anger or whatever. Like you can just kind of tell.
Right.
And so that's kind of what attracted me to music was, I had a good feel for it, and it was such a powerful thing.
Do you still use that kind of stuff now? Do you think in your work?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I mean, when you watch a video, 50% of the experience is sound.
Yeah.
So when I, whatever video I'm creating, I'd say 9 times out of 10, I'm selecting the music and not my client. I do have a couple of clients that want to pick music, and most of them pick pretty good music. Occasionally you get one you're like, I don't like that, but whatever. Okay, you picked it.
Yeah.
And so I definitely use it as far as that goes to pick out and select music that has the right feel for the video.
Right.
And then timing video to music is also another thing that's important, like lining everything up.
Yeah.
So.
And I guess because there's like a huge influx of people flying drones.
Yeah.
What do you think did you think it's the perspective of like what you're getting? Do you think it's that you can just like buy this huge thing and fly? Because for me, what makes what you do so cool is that like, I feel like, there's a lot of people that can like you said, pop up a drone, take like a snapshot of something and then just come back down and it'll look cool because like, I can't do that. I can't get up there. But you do like really cool cinematic video shots. So I feel like, do you think that really is what it is that like people just kind of want the novelty aspect?
So yeah, I mean, there's a novelty in it just because again, like you can put it in the air, like you can get that perspective that's different from what like, now again, they are a lot more common, but you can get that different perspective than what most people are able to get or post. And I always tell people it's more than just that, because a drone is a camera. As long as there's not something else there, you can put it there. You know what I mean? Like even where we're at right now, like I can fly a drone 10 feet above a building where how are you going to get 10 feet above that building any other way? You're just not going to, you'd have to try and climb up there with a really tall tripod or something to get a shot. Like you can put a drone anywhere, even indoors. I do shooting indoors all the time with drones where even an architect called Zimmerman Architects, they did a video on their office space to try and win like the best office in Milwaukee award in 2018. And they did win it. And some of the shots we did, they have 2 floors, but it's a super open space. So we could easily use the drone to just transition from the bottom floor to the top.
You got to be really secure with your flying abilities, I feel like.
There was even one where they have, because the ceilings are so tall, like even their conference room like has just a wall that ends. So we went from in the conference room, flew over the wall into the kitchen.
Oh my gosh.
So you're like in tight spaces and stuff. So you do. And then even I had to fly in there at night, and with the drones now, they have positioning stuff on the bottom, like cameras and stuff, but none of it works in the dark. Like it's all just trash in the dark. And so then you're like 100% manual. Like the drone has no idea where it is in the dark. And there's no GPS because you're inside and all that. So, I think that's one of the best things about it is again, you can basically fly it anywhere. But then one of my pushes has always been like, whatever I see people doing, how can it be different? Like I don't just want to post the same, wide shots or the same things that everybody does. Like how can I make mine different from what, 95% of people out there are posting.
Right.
And then there's even people that are farther into that than me, that just, you see their stuff and you're like, holy crap, like, you know,
yeah,
that's next level kind of stuff. And those are the people that are probably in the end driving people like me to try and push that. You know, they're pushing an envelope and I'm seeing it and going, okay, I'm going to try and recreate this and make that happen.
Right.
And then that, you know, in turn later on down the road pushes other people to continue trying to do the same thing and
right.
push the limits and stuff like that.
Yeah. What do you think makes yours different and more appealing? Because you have, you know, from my estimation, done really well with this. And, you know, like the stuff you come out with is really great. So like, what do you think that is that's different?
It's a couple things. I mean, some of it has to do with straight up being able to fly and know how to fly
right.
properly and just get the right shots and having a lot of experience. I have hundreds of hours of flying now.
Yeah.
And having the experience to be able to get that shot and know exactly what needs to be. Some of it has to do with an eye, like, and it's not like I, you know, use the thirds on the, you know, the rules of thirds all the time or something. Like, it's just having a feel. Like when you see something on a screen, I don't always know what I'm after.
Sure.
But when I see it, I know that's what I'm after. Like on the screen, I look at it and go, that's right. Or I go, I should change it up and it needs to be a little more like this. And I'll go back and refly it and get that shot again. So some of it has to do with having an eye for it. And then some of it has to do with gear. Like, I mean, when you spend 15 grand on a drone, like you can swap lenses and you can have different focal lengths and all that stuff that, you know, 95% of people out there they have one focal length. They have a Phantom or a Mavic with a 24 millimeter wide lens, and that's all they got.
Yeah. I didn't even know you could swap them out.
Yeah. So my Inspire, you can put, I think I have 5 lenses for it. I can swap out between 12, which is basically 24. It's a micro 4/3 sensor, so you're cropped in and all that.
Sure.
But it'll go from that regular wide shot into like a 90 millimeter.
Oh, wow.
Really tight. And the problem with drones is the farther you get zoomed in, the more stability becomes an issue, because you're zoomed in so far that even if the drone moves a foot, you can see it easily. Like the camera's shifting, you can see all that. So the longer the focal length is on the camera, on the lens, the more stable you have to be.
What would you use that for? Like that?
All kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, anything where you want to be zoomed in real tight, or you want to, like, so a classic example was the Bradley, and this is just one. Like, I've used it on cinematic stuff too.
Sure.
But one example where I used it was the Bradley Center when they imploded that.
Okay.
They put up a 1 mile no fly zone around that because they were using explosives.
Oh yeah.
So you couldn't fly inside of a mile.
Yeah.
Within a mile of the thing. So I went just outside of a mile, which was down by Memorial Park down here.
Okay.
And it's right there. And I used that higher zoom lens to, you know, get up as high as I could and get a shot of the Bradley from a mile away.
Oh,
and it wasn't amazing. Like, it was still a little bit far, but I mean, you are not going to get the same shot with anything else.
Right.
Except the helicopter, probably.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean, so with all of this stuff, like, where do you want it to go? Because you're still working another job.
I'm still working in construction for now. My goal obviously is to get out of that and be doing it full time.
Right.
It's, you know, I have a family too, so it's one of those things of like, if I was single, I probably already would have done it.
Right.
But I have a wife and I have a 4-year-old, and like that stability of a job and insurance and all that stuff, like, doesn't, you know, it's obviously important. And so that is my end goal at some point, but it's not cheap to run a business. It's expensive to run a business. And so it's always, you know, it's always harder. It's more than just like, if I'm making, you know, I'll use random numbers. Yeah. If I'm making X amount of money at my day job, and if I make that with drones, it's not equivalent. You got to make significantly more on your personal business to basically make an equivalent of what you would make at at a normal job. So it's a lot, you know, that goes into it. So.
Have you had any other businesses like before this one?
No, first one.
So has there been like a big learning curve with that? Like,
I mean, you know, you don't get an accountant soon enough, and that bites you in the rear end hard. You know, all of a sudden you're like, oh shoot, you know, I should have got an accountant like, you know, 6 months ago.
Yeah.
You know, that's one of the hardest things about it. And then staying on top of everything, it becomes such a task to even invoicing. Like, I literally right now have thousands on my computer that I got to go back and invoice, and like finding time to do it is like, you know, it's a drag. You're like, oh man, I got to go take care of this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and no one else is going to do it. It's not like you can hire a service and be like, oh yeah, I want to bill out X amount on this job and X on this one. Because by that point I might as well have just done it myself by the time I told someone else to do it.
Yeah.
So, you know, staying on top of all the little tiny things that are involved with it, even every year remembering to renew insurance and get in touch with my agent and talk about all the stuff that has to do with insurance and all that, like all these little things that come up that you got to stay on top of, that if you fall behind, like they totally bite you in the ass later.
Just buries you.
And sometimes you're just like, oh my gosh, where am I going to find time to do all this?
Yeah.
On top of the 5 projects I have to edit or whatever. So it's just like, oh man.
Yeah. Cause you do, as well, speaking of that, you do like a YouTube series, or started doing one about giving like tips to people who are flying drones. So like if someone was looking to start doing a similar thing to you, with like drone photography and aerial, video, what would you advise? Like, what would your advice to them be?
I mean, so my videos are super good for that. I think so far I'm still, I haven't done one for a month now because I've been so busy. It's on my list. Like I actually have like 3 of them scripted out. And I'm like, I got to do these, like soon. Point, and I'm like, oh my goodness, so I'm hoping in June, I'll have some time to record a couple more and get them out. But, I would tell people, make sure you understand the legal aspects of things first, because a lot of stuff is happening in the legal realm with drones. Like it's always changing and adjusting. But a lot of big corporations will come to you with like, when they contract me to do it, like they have stuff that comes from their attorneys down to you that like you have to make sure that like they want to make sure that you're playing by the book, like everything's right. And so not everybody will have that, but a lot of them do. And so in order to be able to reach and take care of all your clients, no matter how small or big they are, you got to make sure you're all in on the legal aspects of things, and then the insurance side of it as well. If you're not following all the federal regulations, your insurance finds out, they'll just drop you. Or if you have a claim, like if I crashed into, the middle of the street here and I hit someone or whatever, and they were like, oh, you didn't do X, Y, Z when you to follow the regulations, and you try to file a claim, they're like, no, sorry, like, you're on your own. And so, make sure you understand all that. But then there's the whole, like, understanding video and photo side of it. Like there's the legal side, just because you're flying an aircraft according to the FAA. But then there's like with you with video production, like understanding that whole side of things too. It's twofold as far as that goes. And you got to dive into that and really understand all that if you're going to really, push beyond just doing residential real estate. Like, a lot of people jump into that, and that's fine. If people want to stick to that, that's great. But that's a very, very tough to deal with market, just because realtors tend to be cheap. They don't want to pay a lot. They're demanding all that. So there is that, but you're doing a lot of work for less pay, as opposed to trying to push into things that are, not necessarily less work, but have a higher pay opportunity for you. And so you have to understand, the ins and the outs of the video and photo world to jump into all that stuff.
Right. Yeah. And one of the most recent videos you did, was on shooting in cold weather, which is like my nightmare. I hate doing that.
I hate it too.
Yeah.
I hate it. I hate the cold in general. Yeah. But then like having to be outside and shoot in the cold, you're like, this sucks.
Yeah. Cause you're not actually doing anything like physically enough to keep you warm. But because you shot that show in the wintertime too.
2 seasons. Yeah. And the last one was in New York.
Was that tough?
It sucked. The one night, like the sun's going down, or the one day I should say, the sun's going down, and like we're out there for a couple hours shooting like this, basically out in a field. Like, it's I think it was even lightly snowing at the time. Yeah. Plus there's like 2 feet of snow on the ground. Right. We're out there and you're just like, this sucks. Like, I'm freezing my ass off. Yeah. And like, this is not fun.
What is the show about?
So it's actually it's a murder. It's a true crime show about murders that specifically center around winter. Okay. So, that's why like the winter shots, quote unquote, where it's like snowing or there's snow on the ground, or it's like gloomy and like cloudy, overcast is like everything to them. Like they're all about that. Yeah. Which, I keep telling them like, hey, when you shoot the summer version of this, so, Dead in Summer, I'm like, make sure you call me to go to Florida on those ones too. Cause right now I just hate you.
I'll take that one over this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm like, hey, I'll shoot these as long as you call me on the other one too. Then we're good.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Cause that's a huge thing too, especially here in Wisconsin. Like there have been times when I would go shooting in the winter and I'd be out there for like 10 minutes and I'd be like, this sucks. I'm not doing this. Like, this is crazy.
Yeah. I've had days when, it's been so cold that, the drone doesn't care about cold so much. Like batteries, if you keep batteries warm, they're good to go. But the drone itself really doesn't care how cold it is out. And so as long as but there's been days when I specifically remember this last winter, I was trying to get some shots or something. It was like literally 0+ wind chill. Yeah. And again, the drone doesn't care. So, but I do, and I'm freezing my butt off out there. And I can't, so I wear gloves when I fly, but they don't have fingertips on, or they fold back because I can't like feel the sticks well with gloves on, like actually in your fingers when you're flying. So I'll fold the thumbs back, but then literally it was so cold with the wind chill that after like 5 minutes, I was like, oh my God, I gotta land, jump back in the car, warm back up, go shoot for 5 more minutes. And it's just, over and over like that until you get what you need. It was terrible.
Yeah.
It's not always that bad, but winter flying's by far the worst.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you, like, what is besides winter, like what is the toughest conditions to fly in? Like, honestly,
one of the hardest things is spring here because the Seagulls are super aggressive.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, I have videos of like, actually the shot I did for recently for the BMO Harris building when they lit it up and it said "Fear the Deer."
Yeah.
I swear 100 Seagulls above me when I was shooting that stuff. I'm not kidding. Jeez. And they're dive bombing and all this. And I've never had one hit the drone. But you're always conscious of the fact that like what's below me, because if they do decide to, or they do like miss and hit it or whatever, I don't think I think they're trying to intimidate it because they think spring is when they nest, right?
Right.
So they think you're going to bother their nest. So they get real aggressive. Well, so I don't think they're actually going to hit it, or that's not their intent. They're just trying to intimidate it and scare it to go away.
Right.
And so they dive bomb it and they don't hit it. But again, if one screws up and like goes too low and smacks it out of the sky, well, what's below me? So that's something to be conscious of with that. And it's super frustrating just because, you want to try and avoid them as best you can. So like what I'll do is what they don't like is birds don't like stuff that's below them.
Okay.
They want to be above. Right. And so a lot of times what I'll have to do in spring is like, if I know what shot or shots I need to get, I'll fly above them. They scatter because they get, kind of afraid of stuff above them, above their heads. And then you swoop in and get the shots I need to get. And I have enough time before they start coming back then to hopefully get what I need and then go back above and just repeat it over and over and over until you get what you need.
They're like trolling you.
Like, this is horrible. Like, it is seriously the worst. And it's better now. Even now in end of May, it's better. They're not nearly as aggressive as they are in like March and April. They're pretty bad.
That's what I was wondering why, maybe like if they thought that it was another seagull or something.
Yeah, no, they think it's a predator trying to attack their nests, I think.
Wow.
And yeah, that's probably the worst.
Yeah. Are other birds like that?
There are some. We don't have issues with it here, but there are some hawks and falcons and eagles and stuff that can be like predatory birds that can be an issue. I know specifically like down in Australia, they have birds that will, especially with fixed wing drones where they're like, they fly like planes and they have a prop on the back. Sure. Like a lot of people use those for mapping out in Australia, and they do have birds that will try to snag their drones out of the air.
Wow.
So there's different maneuvers they have on those. Like they actually specifically on those mapping or surveying drones, they have a button that they hit that makes it either ascend really fast, like it just kicks into an ascent, or a descent.
Wow.
So I've read articles about these guys that are just up there watching the thing, and there'll be birds circling and they're just waiting for it to dive bomb and try to grab it, because it will straight up like grab it and just fly away with it. Right. So they're just hitting there like with their little, ready to press the button and just sitting there watching. And as soon as the bird starts to drop, boom, they hit the button to, basically take an evasive maneuver almost to avoid it. Yeah. So we don't have that here so much. I haven't had any large birds, but I know people do occasionally have issues with those.
Yeah. Cause I have a problem with birds. It seems like, cause the black birds that have they have red and yellow wings, they are massively aggressive. I run on the lakefront sometimes, and there was one that tried to do that to me while I was running. I'm like, I'm like 8 times the size, or more than 8 times. I'm huge compared to you. And I just saw
in spring.
Yeah.
Nesting, dude, every time. Yeah. Seriously. They're trying to protect their stuff, and you're just like, I don't care. Like,
I'm not even alone. I don't even know where it is.
No, exactly. You're like, I don't have a clue.
You could see, because I could see the shadow of a bird doing this, when they kind of are ready to land. Yeah. And I looked back, and it was probably this far away from me, about to land on me.
You're like, oh crap.
And I just started serpentine. I didn't know what to do. So I just started running.
Like it's an alligator chasing you. They say go back and forth. You're like, I don't know.
Maybe this will work. And so I'm just I'm screaming on this bike trail with a bird trailing me, just running around.
That's terrible.
Yeah, but they'll go for you, man. Yeah, they will if they think you're a threat. Yeah, I never would have thought of that. Seagulls are huge. So they could take down a drone easy.
Oh yeah, and they either you'll cut them and nick them up, or they could easily break a prop and take one down. Yeah, right. They suck. Yeah. They're the worst. I hate them.
They are. They're so aggressive.
I was doing one shot. This is for a commercial real estate project. This was not this spring, but back in 2018. Yeah. And I took off, and it was 7 a.m, pretty early before people. It was a Saturday early.
Sure.
And all of a sudden, all I hear is just a million cawing of like seagulls. I look up and I'm like, I feel like I'm in the Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds right now. Like he was literally that bad. Like the sky almost went black with seagulls. I'm like, oh gosh. I'm like, so I think I even landed because I was like, I'm just gonna let them calm down for a minute because that's a lot. Like, like 15 of them, I actually am fine, but like 150 or whatever. Like, there was a ton.
I'm like, gang of seagulls.
I'm gonna wait a little bit. Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, you're gonna dress your drone up as a seagull, and just see.
I should and hopefully. Be like, we're just one of you. I'm just one of you
hey guys, and just flying around,
hanging out.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
I'm just a mutant seagull. That's all.
Just trying to chill. So I guess with your website, what are your goals? Like, what do you want to do with your company in like 3 years time? Like, where you see it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I want to push more into the marketing stuff. I have a bunch of production companies I do work with.
Yeah.
But even trying to push further than that, I think that one thing that's going to help is, I think pretty soon flight over people is going to be a legal thing that we can do. At least on the commercial side. So right now, you like on the commercial side, even on a hobbyist side, you're not supposed to fly over people at all. Like,
oh really?
Yeah. So like when people, this is actually one of my favorite is like even like Summerfest, they actually have drone detection over at Summerfest.
Oh,
so
really?
Like if people during Summerfest like take a drone off, like probably anywhere within a half mile, they know. And if you're anywhere near where they can get to you, like I literally watched a guy flying a drone last year, not even in Summerfest, like outside,
sure,
but like flying towards it, taking pictures. And my wife goes, oh, look, a drone. And I look over, I'm like, where's the guy at? And before I could even find out where the dude was, there was already security carts we saw going towards him. And they were like, hey, I'm assuming they just said, hey, can you land and just leave, please? They just don't want him out there.
Yeah.
And so one of the reasons is that like right now you can't fly over people, you can't fly over crowds, all that like is off limits against the law. And that's all about the change. Hopefully maybe for my business sooner rather than later, but as far as a long, like being straight up allowed under the laws, for most people to do as long as you're following certain rules and all that, probably 2020, that's going to open up. So I think as we see, the next 3 to 5 years here, I think drones are going to go from like still fairly fledgling right now, I feel like, to being a lot bigger thing. Like we'll see more and more pushes towards package delivery and all that stuff taking off. So I won't jump into package delivery, but my feeling is that as those kinds of things become more common and more everyday things, people will start to draw drones out to use them in their businesses more. And so hopefully that will again for me mean, okay, like I can, more people that want to use my business.
I didn't know that was a rule at all. So you can't, even if like you're like doing a movie or something, you want to fly a drone over someone walking, you can't do that?
Nope. Yeah, not right now.
Wow.
Yeah. There is something that you can get waivers for anything, but so like I have a daylight waiver. So like even actually commercial drones you can't fly at night. Like they think basically from a half hour after sunset till a half hour before sunrise. Okay. That whole real dark time you can't fly legally. So we have a daylight waiver and there's all kinds of regulations we have to follow to use it. Like, extra, you have to have a visual observer out there. You got to have lights, special lights on your drone, all this stuff you have to do in order to legally quote unquote fly at night. And, again, you can get waivers for other stuff. Like you can't get a waiver to fly over people, but the way it is right now, you have to basically give them a buttload of information about basically safety impact tests about like how much weight your drone, if it hits somebody in the head, it's going to it's with the parachute. So people think if you put a parachute on a drone, it's safe. Like that'll stop it from falling. Right. But what people don't think about is if you have, let's say, an 18-mile-an-hour crosswind. So yes, vertical drop, the drone's going to fall slow. Yeah. Let's say you have a 15-mile-an-hour, 18-mile-an-hour crosswind. That drone is still traveling, horizontally at 15 to 18 miles an hour. Yeah. So if that hits someone, if it's 8 pounds and it hits somebody in the head at 18 miles an hour, that's still a lot of weight. Like that could, the bigger they are, you could potentially kill someone with even with the parachute on from the crosswinds. And
just think about like the propellers that they're still moving,
So that's one of the pushes. That's one of the things with the new flight over people stuff that's coming out down the road is that actually even right now to get a waiver to do it, you have to have some kind of mitigation that the propellers are not moving.
Oh, okay.
And they even down the road when the new rules come out, they're going to want you to have some way basically to prevent punctures too. So like you're going to have cages or something around the props that, and what'll probably happen is like people will have a setup that they'll use for flying over people.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the time they'll use one that's not like, doesn't have a parachute, doesn't have prop guards or prop cages, all this stuff. So this, like you'll have one drone that's like, that's my flight over people drone.
Right.
And then you'll have other ones that are like, these are my normal ones that I use when I'm not flying over a crowd or a specific instance instance like that.
Right.
Because of the mitigations they're going to make you use on all that stuff. So
my question is this though.
Yeah.
Aren't you always really flying over people? Because like, depending on how high you are and where you're going, I mean, like if you're in anywhere other than like rural Wisconsin or somewhere rural, like in cities, there's always people walking around.
So yeah. And that's one thing I try to be picky and choosy about when I fly. And where I fly at, like, the FAA defines flight over people as over people, like straight up. Like if I draw a it's like a little bit more tricky. Yeah, like if I draw a straight box going up above somebody,
I get what you mean.
That's over, with the caveat that they do also say, but there's winds, there's the speed you're traveling at, all that. So, if there's a 10-mile-an-hour wind and I'm over someone, but the wind's going that way, if my drone falls, it's going to fall to their side. So even though I might be over them, you're actually kind of not. So
I got you. Makes sense.
What I always try to think about is what direction, like what am I traveling? What direction am I moving? And is there anyone in that flight path? And if you try to account, okay, the winds are blowing from X direction,
right?
Am I going to hit somebody if it drops out of the sky because of the speed I'm traveling in the direction?
Gotcha. So that makes sense.
So you can be in a city and fly and not be over people.
Gotcha.
But they also don't want you over traffic either, and that's a whole different deal. Like I don't fly over highways. That's not as bad. Like if you crash, you could kill someone if it causes an accident. Stuff like a residential neighborhood to me is a little bit less of an issue because cars are probably going 15, 20 miles an hour.
Supposed to be.
Yeah, they're supposed to be. And if a drone crashes on your car going like 10 miles an hour, I mean, 15 miles an hour, you're going to stop. Like, there's not that much is going to happen. Now, the technicality of that is they probably would say, well, that's still flying over a moving vehicle. But regardless, there's also the safety aspect of it, and the highway to me is completely unsafe, or a high speed road, as opposed to, like, again, a residential road is a little bit different. Like there's a lot less safety risk there with that. So.
Right. Yeah. Like the people make sense. Like if groups of people, like, cause
they're very worried about that. That's why even like with Major League MLB games, anywhere from an hour before a game to an hour after, there's a 3-mile no fly zone around the ballparks where you're no planes, and people always go 3 miles seems kind of big for a drone. I said, yeah, but this stuff's been around since 9/11. Like this was back, they were trying to keep planes and helicopters out of those airspaces without approval. So it's just drones have become a subset of that since they've become popular in the last 5 years.
Right.
So that 3-mile zone has been in place for, like 17 years now or 18 years now. And it's just been kept in place and drones have been included into that as stay 3 miles away from a stadium.
Right. So now that they have all those regulations from before, and now they're trying to refine them essentially and like make them more sensible to drone flights.
Yeah. I mean, some things won't change. Like the ballpark thing will probably never change. They'll leave that at 3 miles always, but they released the initial sets of rules. And then now they're going everything. What sucks about the FAA is everything's reactionary. Like, so it feels like they had the people that create these laws from their higher ups. They were like, we have to put something out. Right. So they just threw it out. And there's a bunch of pieces of it now that aren't in place. Like there's literally laws that are now considered the federal law for flying drones as a hobbyist. And there's 3 items in it that are like not in effect yet, because like one of them is that hobbyists will have to take a test. And they're like, yeah, we're going to make you take a test, but we haven't made the test yet. So it's like, I'm like,
so why is it a law?
So why didn't you just wait? Like, I get that like Congress was like, oh, we want this done in 3 months. Right. I get it. But like, you should have gone back and like, we need like, just said we need more time, or just what's going to happen if you don't? You're going to get yelled at. Like, just take more time.
Yeah, exactly.
Have all the pieces done instead of confusing hobbyists even more, going from old laws to new ones that aren't ready. Like, have them all ready and go, okay, these are now the laws. This is everything that is to it. It's done. It's set. Everything's in place. Follow this. Now it's like, follow this now, but these parts are coming later on. We don't know when. Like, it's just such a cluster. It's just like,
it's a weird thing to make a law on something that's contingent, that doesn't exist yet.
Well, and if you want people to follow it, why would you make it that difficult? Like if you want, the harder it is for people to understand it, the less likely they are to follow it. And so you've made something that like, I get all of it, but I do this professionally. Like I've taken, I've studied on all this stuff, like airspaces that are around us with the airports and everything. Some of the stuff that's in there, I'm like hobbyists don't know any of this stuff, and they shouldn't have to. You should have simplified all of this to be very straightforward. Here are the, 10 rules we want you to follow them. End of story. And there's a whole, mess of pieces in there that's just like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah. They're called hobbyists for a reason.
Well, yeah. And one of the problems they have is like the AMA, the American, the Aeronautical Model Association, AMA, which is people that fly like planes, like RC planes, have been flying for 50, 60, 70 years.
Yeah.
And they actually have a fairly big lobbying, presence where they try to protect themselves, because they'll fly planes that go, 200 miles an hour, RC planes, like insane. That is a little bit of an exaggeration, but like easily 150. Like they have very fast planes that, and they fly heavy planes. Like they'll fly helicopters that are, almost the size of your living room. Like they're like quarter scale or eighth scale helicopter. Like all these things they build because that's their hobby. That's what they do.
Right.
And unfortunately, the FAA is trying to like squeeze all these things into one category of hobbyists. So they're taking something that's been done safely for like 70 years of model aircraft stuff.
Right.
And they're going, well, this has been fine for now. Like all these people have been flying safe and doing all that. But now we have like people that just go to Best Buy and buy a drone and put it in the air and like have no idea what they're doing.
Right.
So how do we like put these things together and like make them all fall under one set of laws?
Sure.
And they didn't do a real good job of, they should have probably done it a couple of different ways, but they're trying to work with what they think, but it's all reactionary to like Congress telling them to do something and going, oh, well, let's just put something out. It's just so like haphazardly done, but it is what it is. It's still the law. That's the unfortunate part is regardless of how screwed up it is, it's still the law. People still are supposed to follow it.
Right. So, I mean, just hearing you talk about all that stuff, what do you think it is about like drones and like aerial photography and all this stuff that like made you so passionate about it? Because I mean, I could tell that you really care, and you're interested, and in your free time you're looking up laws and like looking up all this stuff. Like obviously you care. What do you think it is about it?
It's twofold. I mean, I feel like if you're going to be in a business, you need to be passionate about it and like dive into every aspect of it. Like you need to not just be like, I mean, there unfortunately are a lot of people that are, quote unquote, commercially certified for drones that don't understand the laws well at all. Like they just, I get questions all the time asking different things, and I always tell people, and that's fine. But for me, it's like, if I'm going to do this properly, I got to really dive in. Like I got to know all the ins and outs of every legal aspect, every insurance aspect, like through and through. And then it's also, the aviation world. If we as drone pilots ever want the aviation quote unquote community to view us as like a part of what they do, one of their big things is they have a culture of safety that's been around for hundreds of years or 100 years, despite this whole Boeing 787 Max incident and all that. I mean, aviation is the airplanes are one of the safest ways to travel, and helicopters, and that's because, like, again, despite this whole recent thing and some of these Boeing things and all that, there's a pretty significant, amount of safety that's required out there in the whole airplane world and the aviation world. I mean, every plane has to be recertified every year. Like they go to I have a friend who has a Cessna, and it goes into, and it goes into a mechanic every year. And they spend like 3 days going through everything on the plane. Wow. And then that plane is certified then to fly for the next year. And so there's all these little things that like are very important to them. Like even the quality of the grade, people always talk about aircraft grade aluminum. That's a thing because they had to make a better aluminum, like something that has a standard to it. That's like, these are made to be this specifically, strong to work in planes and things like that. And so my other push was like, well, if we ever want to get accepted into this whole community, we have to be like embracing the aviation community and the safety surrounding it and the laws and all the things around it. So for me, it's also about that. Like, I think that, drones are a big part of aviation in the future. And so for people to really accept it, we need to be, taking it seriously. So why do you think,
on that, why do you think, I guess my question is like, what is it about drone photography? Because you could have done anything, in your life. You could have done, there's a tons of things that you could have done probably, or taken up, at first as something that you're just like hobby interested in, and now like taking it into a career. Is it like, what do you really like aviation? Is there something about like doing that kind of stuff?
Yeah. And maybe I didn't know it growing up, but like it's totally taken to me, like in who I am. Like just, I mean, like now I even watch videos about, like straight up general aviation stuff because I've grown to have more of an interest in that as well as I've jumped into the whole drone side of things.
Do you think it's like it's just a different perspective on the world?
Yeah. It definitely is. And it's something that not everybody understands or knows, even especially general aviation, manned aviation. I mean, there's so many things about that every time I watch a video or whatever, you learn something new all the time about that. Like it's such a different world that most people aren't tied into it all or don't know very much about.
Yeah.
So it's fun to be like a part of that and learn more about it and understand things about it.
Have you ever thought about like getting a pilot's license or stuff like that?
I have. It's pretty expensive, and I might at some point, but I'm also like, what am I going to use it for? Like,
right.
I just don't feel like I have a purpose to. Like I said, I have a buddy who has a plane, and if I ever, like drones, you can't fly above 400 feet. So if I ever need something that's higher, or I have a customer that does, either I'll go up with him. Hey, let's, he's going to go up and shoot anyway, and I'll be like, hey, I'll tag along and get some shots for this customer, or I'll just say, hey, to my customer, reach out to him. He'll take care of you if I'm too busy to get up with him and take shots myself. So
right. But it was always interesting to me because my grandpa, he had his pilot's license. He would fly out of Racine sometimes. Okay. I think just for fun, he just liked doing it because he was in the Air Force before, and so. But
did he fly in the Air Force? Or
I think so. But yeah, so that was always interesting to me because it would be so cool. I feel like to just go up in your own plane and just fly around a little bit.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of things that seem like in some ways they're dying out a little bit.
Right.
Like even in the construction world that I'm in, it's an aging industry a little bit. Like there's younger people in it, but there's a lot of people, that are starting to get up there in years in construction, and they're having a hard time finding younger people to come into construction.
Sure.
I think aviation kind of is starting to become one of those things. And maybe that's because of drones. The advent of drones coming in is more younger people are kind of gravitating toward that versus manned aviation. And again, that's a generalization. There's still people jumping into it.
It's like an easier way to scratch that itch rather than going through the whole rigorous thing of getting a pilot's license and doing that.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think, aviation, I think, like you said, your grandfather did it. Well, I mean, there's a lot of aging people that are into it, and there's not as many young people in it. So I think that's something that, eventually might drive me to be like, maybe I should get a pilot's license.
How much is it to get it? Like, should I go through?
I want to say ballpark? A pilot's license generally costs people in the ballpark of $5,000.
Wow.
I think helicopter is 10 to 12 if you go that route.
I couldn't do a helicopter. Yeah. I've been in a helicopter before, and I almost
it's scary, dude. And they always say, it cracks me up because helicopter pilots are always like, oh, well, they have this thing called auto rotate. So like if the engine on a helicopter dies, they can basically angle the prop above them a certain way that it basically uses the airspeed of, as it's coming down to help spin the prop fast enough that they don't crash. Like you have a rough landing, they would call it, but usually you can actually even kind of flare the helicopter at the end and basically get a fairly soft, safe landing with no power.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, if planes lose their air, I mean, you could be falling straight down and land it safely. A plane, if it loses its airspeed and there's no air over the wings, it just falls straight out of the sky. So helicopter pilots are always like, oh, we're so much safer than planes. And I'm like, yeah, but usually planes are already moving a direction, so they're gliding, and if they lose their engine, they can usually glide in. And there seems to be a lot, generally, I don't know, helicopters seem more unsafe to me than planes do.
The way they move just, I think, inherently makes you feel like that.
And so, they always claim they're so safe, and I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't feel safe. I feel better in a plane than I do in a helicopter. Helicopters scare the crap out of me. I'm just I don't know.
Yeah, we did like a helicopter tour of the Grand Canyon when I was out there, which is really cool, but it was hard to enjoy it because I felt like I was going to throw up the whole time. It's like something to do with the changing of
the G-forces, I think, too.
All the time.
Like everything's shifting as the helicopter's moving. The G-forces are constantly moving around.
Right. It doesn't move in a way that, like, at least for my humanistic abilities, I'm like comfortable with. Right. It's like this, I shouldn't be moving like this. Like, and my body's like, nah, you shouldn't.
No.
Time to puke.
Exactly. And so it'll be interesting though. Like I was at a conference in Chicago called AUVSI 2 weeks ago, and it's basically a drone convention down at McCormick Place. Hundreds and hundreds of companies, hundreds of millions of dollars in the room of just new inventions, things that are going on.
Yeah.
And one of them is Bell Helicopters actually working on if you take a helicopter and a drone and like merge them.
Oh yeah.
That's basically what it is. Like it's the body of a helicopter, and I think it seats 5 people.
Okay.
But it has what we would call ducted motors over top. So it's like props, like 6 of them, but they have a cowling around the outside of the prop.
Okay.
So like a circle for just protection, and then props in the middle, and there's like 6 of them. So it looks like a drone version of a helicopter to fly people
massive
around.
Drone.
It is. And so, that potentially could be down the road a safer way for helicopters to be a thing, because in theory, in that if you lose one motor, it could still potentially land safely.
Right.
And it's way less than like a massive spinning blade that's gonna like hit the ground and smash into pieces and all this stuff that happens. That does happen with helicopters.
Yeah.
You know, and they're talking about even that being automated, that Bell helicopter. Like I guess their goal is to have it, like if you wanted to fly from here to Madison fairly quickly, you could, not to be like cross country, but to like, it's cause it's battery operated, but like you could fly from here to Madison and be there in 30 minutes or whatever. It goes 150 miles an hour and you don't have traffic. You don't have any of that stuff. And their goal is to have it where it's like automated. Like you press a button, this is where I want to go. And it just takes you there. Yeah.
Sounds like an Elon Musk idea.
It does. It does. What's funny though is there's still a seat up front that's like quote unquote a pilot seat.
Okay.
And they said that we're actually concerned that like people won't want to get in and be in it if there's not a quote unquote pilot in it, like public perception.
Yeah.
And so they're like, our plan at first is to have a pilot seat up front. That way people feel that, you know, safety factor.
It's pretty crazy. The rate of technology is improving now. In like 5 years, it's going to be insane to see what's out there.
Yeah. And unfortunately that brings around more bugs. Again, like that whole Boeing 787 MAX thing. That's kind of like a software bug in the end, or a software issue that has now killed people, unfortunately. But that's one of the issues. Again, like I said, with technology, the more we get, the more that's going to, you know, the more problems we seem to have. But at the same time, there is a huge factor there for like safety down the road. Like, you know, like Uber wants to have all automated cars. I mean, that makes sense all day. Like you don't have to have a driver in a car. And in theory, down the road, cars driving themselves could be way safer than people driving them. But like there's a lot of stuff to bridge there between those two. Between now and then, like there's a lot that happens.
There's a lot of stuff to figure out.
So
but yeah, so on your website, like where can people find you? It's MKE Drones on everything.
Yep. So if we're on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, it's all at MKE Drones.
Okay.
And then our website is www.mkedrones.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on, man. Absolutely. It was great talking to you.
Awesome.